Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to RWM Finance. And today's topic is what is an emergency fund, why it's important, and why you need one. So what is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is basically what its name is. It's an account with money in it that is only used for an emergency. So if you haven't subscribed, please scroll down and click that subscribe button, and we're going to move right on in with the topic. So I've got to ask you, have you ever had an emergency, like a unexpected job loss, like what's going on right now, or unexpected medical emergencies, or car troubles, or home repairs? I mean, they're kind of endless. I mean, did your water heater go out? Did you, I don't know, need a new transmission on your car? There's countless emergencies that could happen. And I mean, I'm guessing if you're like most people, you probably have had one. Okay, so in one of my previous videos, which was titled Why the Poor Stay Poor, which I provided a link to you up above, I mentioned that the poor stay poor because they don't have an emergency fund. I also said that if you have no emergency fund, when times get tough, they will end up being a lot tougher than if you did have an emergency fund. Right now is a perfect example of why people would want an emergency fund. There are plenty of people who are out of work due to the coronavirus, and I can bet you that those that did have an emergency fund are very thankful that they did. So here are a couple of benefits of having an emergency fund. Number one, it keeps your stress low. By having an emergency fund, you know that you can handle things. You know that you can take care of yourself when an emergency happens. It can be really liberating. It will provide you with the confidence that you can handle life. Number two, it keeps you from making impulse buys. If you keep your money stored away in an area that it is hard to reach, I guess, that is great. That is great. You need to keep doing that. But if you keep your emergency fund stored, say, on your debit card, now is a great time to change that. With you storing it on your debit card, you are more likely to spend it. So you need to move that to an area where it is harder to reach. So many banks will allow you to set up sub-accounts in order for you to put money away into like an emergency fund. So keep your money out of your immediate reach so you are less likely to spend it. And number three is it keeps you from making costly financial decisions. Say an emergency happens. There are many ways to access quick and accessible cash. However, many come with high costs like penalties, fees, and interest. By having an emergency fund, you can avoid these costly financial decisions. So now I bet you're saying like, okay, this emergency fund seems like a pretty good idea, which it is. But how much money do I need to keep in my emergency fund? Well, according to most financial planners, and from what I have read, they suggest that you should have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in your emergency fund. Now, there are other financial advisors that suggest that you should have up to like 12 months or a year's worth of expenses. But, you know, if you can do that, great, more power to you, that's awesome. But I think, and from majority of what I have read, they suggest that you should have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So I would say that setting that as your goal and trying to achieve that would be a great place to start. Okay, so now where should you put your emergency fund? So your emergency fund should be in highly liquid assets. From what I've read, and what I would suggest would be like a plain savings account. You know, just a savings account you'd set up at your bank, or a money market fund, or an investment portfolio. The money that is in this emergency fund needs to be easily accessible or easily liquidated. So an example of liquidity would be an investment portfolio can be much more easily liquidated than, say, a rent house. Both are assets, but the liquidity level would be a lot higher with the investment portfolio than a rent house. Now, if you do decide to put your money into an investment portfolio to represent your emergency fund, you need to be extremely careful because this money is, saved up for an emergency. You do not want to run the risk of losing it. However, that is an easily liquidated asset that you could put your money into. But if you want to be like extremely safe, I would suggest just going along with a savings account or a money market fund. Now, how are you going to fill up your emergency fund? Well, I mean, income tax checks are pretty good, but those only come once a year. But if you're really wanting to look at how to put some money into your emergency fund from like weekly or monthly, I would suggest that you make a budget. So if you don't know how to make a budget, I've provided the link to my video on how to save money by making a budget. If you make a budget, you will be able to see where you can cut expenses and see if you have any leftover income, which would be great to use to fill up your emergency fund. The links to the videos that I provided within the video will also be in the description box down below. Well, as you can see, having an emergency fund is really important and it can be really helpful. So I hope that y'all will use these helpful tips and start saving for your own emergency fund. Well guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and subscribe. And if you have any helpful tips that you do on how to save for an emergency fund or like what type of account, post those in the comments section and try and help somebody out. Thanks. I'll see y'all in the next video.